Hey guys, we're going to get started. Again, my name is Ken. I'm a location pastor in Avon. We're with Burt, and tonight's webinar, we're talking about keeping your kids safe. Burt, tell us a little bit about yourself. There might be some people that don't know who you are, so share a little bit of information with us.
Sure. I'm Burt Parker. I am originally from Augusta, Georgia. I serve as the student director at Grace Church Avon, and this month actually marks my third year at Grace Church, which is kind of cool. I feel like it's been longer. I'm married to a wonderful woman, Lindsay. She is actually a New England local. She's a native. I am not, of course. And we met while we were at grad school. So I did my undergrad in Georgia at a school called Augusta University, where I studied journalism and history. And shortly after that, for a little while, I was a reporter, which was fun. And then I knew I wanted to go into ministry. I knew I wanted to be in youth ministry. So I went to seminary in Fort Worth, Texas, and got my master's degree in Christian education with an emphasis in youth ministry. There, I met this beautiful blonde-haired girl from New England, and I was really, really disappointed when I first met her, and she didn't have a New England accent. She didn't sound like Mark Wahlberg. I was really upset about that. But I got over it, and we started dating, and we fell in love, and we got married, and then I served at a church there for a while, and then from a distance, it was cool because Pastor Sean was kind of mentoring me from a distance while I was there in Texas. And when I would visit New England to, visit Lindsay's home, I would hang out with Sean, and he, kind of invested me from a distance. And I really appreciated that. And the cool thing about that situation was the fact that when my wife, Lindsay, was in youth group here when she was a kid growing up, Pastor Sean was her youth pastor when she was in youth group, which is kind of like a cool full circle thing now. So it's I get to be the youth pastor at the church where my wife, where her youth pastor is the head pastor. So it's a cool experience.
That is cool. I think one question everyone wants to know is, how long has it taken you to grow that thing on your lip?
Man, let's just say the Parker family is not blessed with facial hair genes. So I've been working on this for like a long time. All of quarantine. So I said that when all the lockdown first started, when is it being shaved off? I said I was going to shave it off when lockdown was over. Once we were finally finished and we were allowed to go outside and hang out again, I would shave it off. I don't know who came up with the idea to grow a mustache, but I saw a lot of youth pastors were doing it. And I was like, you know what? That's the only facial hair I can grow. So we'll see how it works. And it's kind of weird. It's a strange sensation to have to dry it off after taking a shower. That's weird. Yeah. But my wife is not a fan. No.
That was my next question. And is Lindsay a big fan?
No, she is. No. The COVID stash. That's correct, Brian. She is not a fan whatsoever. But what can you do? It grows on you.
Fantastic. Hey, we're going to get into the topic, and I'm very interested in this topic because I have 3 kids. 2 of them are out of the house, but I have a 13-year-old, and I know my 13-year-old is constantly on a device, phone, tablet, and it's just a huge part of her life. And I'm sure she's not the only teen that lives and dies by her electronic devices. So my first question is, can you share some stats about how much time and teens spend on the internet and some of the other apps that they use?
Sure. First of all, this is a topic that's dear to my heart. I love studying youth culture. I've been in youth ministry now for full time for almost 10 years. So this generation, Gen Z, has a lot of buzz about it because right now Gen Z is the most diverse generation in American history. And it's also right now, which is kind of wild to think about, it's the largest generation in America as of today. So they have they're the biggest group. That means they have the highest voting power. They have the highest purchasing power. Our culture, our media, our technology is geared towards those kids. And there's a lot of going back and forth on when does a Gen Z start? Is it 1995 or 2000? And different groups will rate that generation at a different rate. But in my mind, I consider Gen Z 2000 and up. So if any person who's 20 years old and younger, 20 plus is kind of that lower millennial range. Every generation has a lower tier and a higher tier. And Gen Z right now, has that same kind of condition. But They are deeply rooted in technology. This is the first generation that has never existed without the internet. The millennials were the first generation to experience, to go from no internet to internet. And now Gen Z has never experienced a time where there was no internet or was no smart device, which is kind of a crazy thought. And it's such an ingrained part of their identity that technology is become part of who they are and how they communicate, how they exist. And whether we like it or not, technology and social media is going nowhere. It's not going to ever run out. It's not a fad. It's literally become a new part of our culture. It's, groundbreaking technology it's not going anywhere. 50%, this is what I've got some crazy numbers for you, Ken, actually. 50% of Gen Z uses the internet for 10 hours a day or more. So these kids are living their lives vicariously through their phones or their tablets or their video games. They exist there. 95% of Gen Z has a smartphone or has access to a smartphone. So maybe they don't personally have their own device, but that last 5% or that 95% counts that they have access to it. It's there somewhere. So when it comes to social media, they're on Instagram and YouTube. YouTube is kind of the king right now. And this stat right here will probably break your heart, but Generation Z streams 23 hours of media a week. So of 7 days a week, almost one full day of that week is spent consuming some type of content, whether it's YouTube or it's social media or it's video games, watching TV, scrolling on their phone, even talking to somebody on their phone. 23 hours a week. The attention span has been cut in half from the millennial generation. The millennials' attention span was 15 seconds. And the average attention span of a Generation Z kid is 8 seconds. And this is nuts. I find myself doing this too, I guess, just because I've always been kind of a tech buff and I've always loved this kind of stuff. But 66% of Generation Z students use more than one internet connect device at the same time. So maybe parents, you've seen that too, where your kid has got their phone in one hand and their iPad is in their lap and they're watching TV and they are absorbing all three sources at the exact same time. And more than half of all the Generation Z kids, when they use the internet, are using more than one device at a time. So that right there is a crazy. So it's not just one screen; it's multiple. They are surrounded by technology. They're surrounded by devices. So the stats on this are kind of wild, Ken.
Yeah, I know. Like with my daughter, she'll be on the internet doing homework, but then she has her phone and she's doing something else. She's like multitasking.
Yes.
So she has multiple devices. So I can see her easily doing 10 hours a day just because it's multiple devices and that stuff adds up. And I imagine kids are probably even more now that everyone's homeschooled.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Not using their phones at school, but now they have to use their phones, they have to use their laptops for the better part of the day just to catch up with homework and stuff like that.
Right. In this quarantine, these numbers are pre-quarantine numbers. And I guarantee, I think you're exactly right, that if we were to do the same poll again now, those numbers would be way higher because kids now live in they never leave. They're never in a place where they're not going to have that device in their hand.
Well, let's ask the parents that are on. What is your guess? Is your kid watching, streaming more than 10 hours a day? What is your best guess? We'll see some numbers here. I would say my 13-year-old, it's plus. It's 10 hours plus.
Yeah. It's what's great now is that Apple, being the leading smartphone manufacturer, they've actually released a new software. It's relatively new, but it has a tracking of that, and it will tell you how much and how you use your phone every day. And those numbers can be pretty convicting. And it'll tell you, hey, your percentage of your phone usage is up, and how many times you've actually picked up your device today, how many times you've looked at your phone. It literally will tell you you've looked at your phone, X amount of times today. So that's a great software for helping to kind of track and see what kids are doing while they're on those, and get an idea. About 6 hours.
Do you know the breakdown? Are high schoolers more than middle schoolers, or is it reverse?
No, it's probably about the same in that regards. So, like I said, there's an upper level to every generation, and there's a upper and a lower whatever. So the middle schoolers and the high schoolers, from my perspective as a youth pastor, I see almost the exact same. If anything, I would think that my middle schoolers are probably on their devices more, and they're more attached to those devices just because of the fact that they, being younger, have really, they're getting fresher and fresher devices. They're getting better technology. Whereas like a 20-year-old, that's a kid that's known, a smartphone, or he's known, I mean, these kids have never known dial-up, but a sixth grader's technology access is going to be much higher than a 12th grader's technology access. But they're pretty comparable, though.
Yeah. Well, technology is great. I mean, we're able to find information faster, more information. So technology has enhanced our lives. And again, we're on it quite a bit. But can you share maybe some of the dangers that parents might not be aware of their kids being on the internet?
Yeah. So I would say that my main thesis of this entire webinar is that parents and guardians can't take a hands-off approach to technology. We cannot take a hands-off approach to social media. These things are a part of our lives, for better or for worse. There are, like you said, there are tons of great perks of these things that we love and we use them all the time. But if it's in an unfiltered setup, there's we're not monitoring, we're not modeling healthy behaviors and healthy, device usage, there are some really severe dangers. And there are three main ones that we're going to talk about. And I've got some notes for you guys as well. I'll post that up here in the handout section in just a second. Like I said, there's three major problems for what happens when a kid is given full access to the internet without any kind of oversight or without any kind of, just a parent just checking in on them. So the first one is this, is that access screen time creates relationship breakdown. Students right now are communicating more than ever, but they are communicating in a way that's social, non-social communication. So they're communicating through a device and not through face-to-face interactions or even voice-to-voice interactions. And when you communicate in that way, it's helpful and beneficial for communicating long distances, and it's great to communicate with large amounts of people at the same time. But there is a breakdown in communicating online because that screen creates a level of separation from the person you're talking to, and it makes it so much harder for you to view that person as a person instead of it creates a disconnect. Whereas when you're talking to that person on your phone, it's easier for you to say something that you wouldn't really say to somebody in person. And maybe you've experienced that with your own kids. Somebody in the chat, maybe it's your kids have said things to other kids online that your kid would never say out loud at school or even say to you. But when they're on their phone, it gives them a false sense of power. It makes them feel like they almost have a level of being anonymous. In which, I mean, of course, if anybody who knows the internet at all knows there's literally no such thing as being anonymous on the internet. The first major problem is that kids won't know how to communicate well. It doesn't give you a great communication system. Sure, you're talking a lot, but just because you're talking a lot doesn't mean you're talking well. The second one is increased amounts of anxiety, depression, even what I would call, the common phrase is FOMO, that kids are being exposed in huge amounts to what other kids are doing, and they are constantly comparing their lives to what they see online. And of course, we only put the good stuff online. We never are really very, we're not very authentic on social media. Maybe unless you have one of those Facebook friends that uses Facebook as a diary, that's kind of weird. But for the most part, we put our best selfies on there. We put our best status updates. We only take pictures of the delicious food that we eat. And so when you do that and you're only putting out there the best of what you're doing in your life, it makes your life look better. And from somebody's outside perspective, teenage perspective, all they see is how great the lives are of other people and not theirs. So they feel like they're missing out. And they constantly are filled with this anxiety of trying to keep up and compete. Whereas, 20 years ago, for you to feel like you were inadequate, you were looking at a magazine at the grocery store and you would see, the Cosmo magazine or the bodybuilding magazine and go, oh, I don't look like that. I'm not as good as them. But now that kind of access to seeing those things are way more prevalent. And so kids are now experiencing higher levels of anxiety, depression, all kinds of mental health issues. In fact, if you look at a timeline of millennials and Gen Z's mental health In 2013, that number skyrockets. It shoots straight up. And 2013 was really the year where we started getting a mass use of the smartphone. The smartphone really kind of came into itself and really started being something that wasn't like a rarity item. It became more of a common item. In 2013, the numbers skyrocket up for anxiety and depression in kids. And the Gen Z generation is the one struggling with depression and anxiety far more than anyone else. In fact, 62% of Generation Z girls have experienced non-fatal self-harm. And that's it's a direct correlation to access to these devices and seeing what other people are doing, and that anxiety of not being able to compete. And the numbers of anxiety and depression, like I said, skyrocketed in this generation. The third problem with unfiltered access is just the fact that 1/3 of the internet now, this is a heartbreaking statistic, but 1/3 of the internet right now is pornography. And students over time, even if they just play the numbers, statistically, they will run into pornography. In fact, 93% of Generation Z boys will see hardcore pornography before the age of 18, before they get out of high school. And 62% of Generation Z girls will see pornography before they get out of high school. Those numbers are mind-blowing. And if we don't monitor and we don't teach our kids how to use the internet well, kids will have better access to porn. And now that we've had 20 years of data now on what internet pornography, what instant pornography does, and it destroys the synapses, it destroys the brain, it creates callousness. It's a direct fuel to the sex slave industry, and so kids, even if they're not looking for it, 1 in 3 websites is pornography. They will run into it. And if we're not watching and we're not teaching them and we're not guiding them from those things, they will run into that. So just in brief wrap up of those 3 problems, the 3 problems are: it creates relationship breakdown, increased levels of anxiety, and then increased access to pornography, which those 3 items there are 3 major catastrophic issues. What happens if a kid doesn't know how to use the internet well, or just given basically a free reign? Okay, this is your device. Here's your iPad. Good luck. Mom and dad don't care. We're never going to look at that again. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that point on mental health was just huge. That's just eye-opening for me, knowing that there's a correlation between young people using the internet and self-image and all that. I was talking with my chiropractor, and there's also a physical element to that, where a lot of kids, because they're on their devices, their heads are down. He's noticed that there's a lot of neck, even back disalignment, and a lot of it has to do with the amount of time that kids are on just their phones and the posture that they have when they're sitting at a table with their computer. So
right,
mental issues and even physical issues.
Yeah,
it's just crazy. So I know that the internet and a lot of the apps that students are using are not self-filters. What I mean is the app is not asking my 13-year-old, are you old enough to use this app? A lot of times, if they can download the app, then they have access to it. Right. So how can parents keep their kids safe when they have access to the internet? They have access to these websites. They have access to these apps.
Right. Well, that's a great question. And like you said, hardly any websites, hardly any apps are ever going to ask for an age. And even if they do, there's no way of verifying that. So a kid can just lie. So there are 3 parts that I would say these are the 3 main ways to protect our kids online, the 3 major parts of this entire webinar. And those 3 things are this: it's having a family tech plan, knowing device management, and then having an approach to social media. And so I'm going to start with family tech plan, which is kind of an interesting concept because I don't think it's something we talk about too much. But a family tech plan is this. It's a plan that a family sits down and creates for how they're going to use devices in their home. Basically, it's the rules of how it's going to work. It's unique to every single family. It's something that I think the adults in the house can sit down and kind of craft it out. And then even when they get an idea of what they want it to look like, invite their kids to be a part of that conversation and say, hey, listen, we want to use our devices well. We want to make sure we're smart and we're wise with these things. And because of that, we're going to create a plan, and we're going to have some healthy boundaries for these things so that we can use them well. Technology is going to be a part of our lives. It's always going to be a part of our life. Therefore, we need to know how to use it well. And when you communicate that to your students, to your children, that helps them to better understand and be more clear with rules. So the thing about when you look at, with how kids listen to rules and obey rules, kids don't mind listening to rules. They don't mind structure. They don't mind structure as long as it's explained, and I think that's just a human nature. I think since we were all teenagers at one point, it's a very rare personality trait for somebody to be like, hey, do this, be told to do something, and for you to be like, okay, I will do that. We've all asked the question at one point, why are we doing it this way? Why do we do it that way? In fact, my dad always used to joke that I would drive him crazy with that question, that he'd say, hey, listen, go do this, go clean your room, go do that. And I'd say, why? I just said it all the time. And it's not that kids hate following rules. They hate when a rule is not explained. So when you sit down and explain to them, hey, listen, here's the rules for how we're going to use our devices in our house. And here's why we have these rules. To protect you, to keep you safe, to make sure you're using these things in a mature, smart way. And then kids go, okay, well, I can understand that. I can respect that because it's clearly explained. So a family tech plan it's got three major parts, three major elements. Like I said, it's unique to every family, but in the work and the research I've done, there's three major elements to it for crafting out that plan. And once you have created that plan with your family, I highly recommend to actually have it written down and then post it somewhere public in your home. Maybe it's something you put on the refrigerator. You have it, somewhere like you have a bulletin board wall in your house, whatever it is, a calendar. But hey, listen, this is the family tech plan that we're going to abide by in this house. And here's the parameters for device usage. Here are the rules. And then at the very bottom part of that family tech plan is the consequences. So if you break these rules and you use a device incorrectly, there will be consequences to that. So I think everybody's probably experienced when a kid has something taken from them as a form of punishment. They don't respond to that very well. They get super angry. They get super upset. But when you say, hey, listen, I'm taking this device from you because you broke this rule, you broke this rule, you broke this rule. And because you broke these rules, here are the consequences. That right there makes it so much easier for a kid and really for anybody to process that punishment, to go, okay, all right. It makes it easier for you to basically own up to your mistakes. So family tech plan has, has four major parts. And this is what it is. Number one is a screen-free zone. And what's a screen-free zone? Basically, it's a place in your home where devices are not allowed to be used. This is specific to your home, like I said. Basically, a screen-free zone is a place where a student is not allowed to take a device in there and have it on their own because they would be there by themselves. Basically, not having a private place to use a device. So this could be a place like a bathroom, a basement, the bedroom. Really, the bathroom one is kind of gross because of all the stuff in there, but kids just take their phones into the bathroom and don't even that. But that bathroom access is a private location for somebody. So I'm going to use a device in an unhealthy way. So I'm going to add in here a handout real quick for you guys to see kind of an example of what this looks like. I'm going to share it now. It's a screen-free floor plan. It's basically just a house layout that I found online, and then I kind of blocked out how that would look. And in there you can see, all right, so like, the kitchen and the living room, that's a public place. That's a place where mom and dad are walking through. It's a place where siblings are walking through. It's where grandma's hanging out watching TV, and the kid won't be in that place alone with a device. That's a great spot. That's okay. That's a good spot for a kid to have their device and be using it. In the basement with the door shut, and they're the only one down in the basement with their phone, their laptop, whatever it is, that would be a red zone. That's a negatory. You should not have that phone there. The bedroom, which we'll get to that one a little bit more in a second, but a phone in the bedroom causes all kinds of issues because number one, they have the most private access to it, and then number two, that blue light device, which is the light that emits from any kind of screen, is so detrimental to sleep patterns, and a teenager is in desperate need of more sleep, to be honest. Like it's a statistic that talks about the fact that teenagers need a certain amount of sleep every night, and that phone, they have their phone in their room, the phone goes off, they get a text message at 11 o'clock at night. Well, they're not going to leave that phone and go back to sleep. they're going to roll over and look at it. And when they cut that phone on, the light wakes them back up, keeps them awake. They say, well, I'm awake now. I might as well check out Instagram real quick. I might as well watch a quick video on YouTube. And then they do that. And they try to go back to bed later at 12:30. They lay down. They get another notification. The light goes off. They roll over, pick it up. And then you say, well, I don't know why my kid won't wake up for school at 7 a.m. Well, it's because your kid's been awake literally all night looking at their phone. So screen-free zone. Number 2 is the daily log-off time. Have a time period in your house where all devices, no matter what it is, are placed away. Whether that's an hour before bedtime, an hour after waking up, at all meals, whatever it is that your family wants to do, there needs to be a time period where we say, okay, devices can be used from here to here. And after that, we're putting them up. We were going to exist and we're going to live as a family without the aid of a device now. And maybe this is where you make a caveat. This is, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, a great time that I spent with my family was that we would, we'd have dinner at the table together. And then afterwards we would go watch some kind of TV show together. And based on the night of the week, we knew what show was on. My mom had control of the TV, so we watched like a lot of Grey's Anatomy and stuff. So I've seen like every episode of Gilmore Girls. But whatever, so maybe you say, all right, after dinner, we're going to put away the devices and we're going to watch TV and we're going to do it as a family. That family time hanging out is a great opportunity to say, all right, no phones away. Because I don't know about you guys, but there's this zombie effect that happens as well, that when somebody looks at that phone and they pick up that phone and it's in front of their face, it's almost like their ears turn off. And it's a terrible way to engage as a family, because basically you're going to try to have a conversation with your kid and they're not listening to you because they are mentally checked into that phone and not paying attention to anything else. So have a daily log off time. So the third one is this. It goes back to what we talked about with bedrooms. It's no devices in rooms overnight. At nighttime, there's no phone usage allowed. There's no iPad. Get the laptop out of there. If your kid has a TV in their room, I would say take the power cord at 10 o'clock at night or something. So kids should not have a device in their bedroom, because that is, like I said, that's a private avenue for them to have that device, which is only going to lead them into temptation, only going to lead them into those 3 problems that we talked about, because they will always see those issues. And the biggest pushback I get from this whenever I have this conversation with parents about this particular topic is the parents will say, well, that's my kid's alarm clock. That's what my kid uses to wake themselves up for school. And I say, this is crazy, but they still sell like digital clocks. Like if you go to the store, you go on Amazon, you can still find a digital clock. Buy your kid a physical alarm clock, teach them how to use it. It probably would give them a skill that they didn't know they had, and take the device out, have a public place where the phones are charged overnight or something, whatever you want to do. Maybe it's in the kitchen or the living room, have like a hub, and say, this is the bowl where the phones go at 10 o'clock at night. And in your room, you won't have your phone. And that's going to push your kids a little bit, but it's a good push. Kids are going to say, but what about if I get a text message? I'm in a conversation. I'm going to miss out on what's happening on my phone. And you can say, you're not going to miss out. You have just delayed access to that conversation. You will be a part of that conversation tomorrow, but for your health and for the sake of this family's health, from this time period to this time period, there will be no phone, and it's not going to be in your bedroom, because overnight usage, like I said, completely destroys sleep patterns. If you want to take away all those 3 negatives that we talked about with unfiltered phone access, the sleep patterns alone will be devastated by having a phone in there at night. Buy your kid an alarm clock. That's the best way right there.
We had that conversation with our 13-year-old, and when she was going to school, she had to get up before my wife did, and so she would use her phone as an alarm. And my wife was able to download something that would actually turn her phone off. She had no access to it at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then it turned back on like at 6, and she had to get up at like 6:15. So that was a compromise that we made, where the phone was in her room, but it was completely shut off. And there was an app that she was able to use that turned it off and then turned it back on. And so that's how we solved that problem.
Yeah. And there's the technology in helping you do that kind of stuff is huge right now. So even a lot of like your Wi-Fi providers, so say Xfinity, for example, well, they'll give the parents the app that will allow them to say, this phone can no longer have access to the internet after this time period. Now, of course, you have to figure out what you're going to do about the cellular data. Maybe that's where you use an app like you're talking about that cuts that cell data off. But you can actually set and program your Wi-Fi router in your house to not give access to the internet to your kids for a certain time period, which is a great thing to look into. And I think Xfinity probably does that the best right now. It's a very user-friendly setup. We don't have kids right now, but it's one of those things where I'm glad that I have that, because it's like, well, that's in my wheelhouse. I can set that up one day when I need it. So like I said, I think the big, we have this situation at summer camp, because at summer camp, we take away the phones. There are no phones allowed at summer camp. And we have students who say, hey, listen, I want to wake up early to go to the early morning worship service. It's at 7 a.m. I don't have my phone to wake me up. So who's waking me up? And that's where, the leaders are kind of like look around at each other and we're like, okay, we'll set an alarm clock. Or we've had kids now who are like, well, I'll bring my own physical, small, tiny alarm clock, plug it into the wall and set it for 7 a.m. so that when it goes off, I'll take myself to morning worship. That's a great habit for a kid to pick up as a middle schooler and a high schooler. So the third one there is no devices in rooms overnight. And the fourth one is full control. I call it the audit. Basically, at any time, you, the parent, you, the guardian, have full access to that device whenever you want. No heads up, no letting the kids know, hey, listen, I'm going to come grab your phone in an hour. No. If you do that, all you're doing is giving your kid a loophole into deleting content or trying to cover up something they shouldn't have been doing. When a kid knows at any moment this phone can be taken from me or this iPad can be taken from me, I need to start using it better. When somebody's looking over my shoulder, and granted, that's something that goes away with time. The more your kid has built up responsibility, the more your kid has built up the right to not need audits as much, then it goes away in time. That's a way to, like, in a healthy way, to meter out how much that kid has access to the device and uses it in a healthy way. So I would say throw in the audit at any time. Say, listen, we gave you that phone. That's our phone. You're using it. And even if your kid saved up the money somehow and bought a device and they said, well, this is my device, I bought it. That's where you hit them with what my dad used to hit me with all the time. He'd say, did you buy your own food today? And I would say, I did not. He said, well, did you pay rent? Did you, buy the clothes off your, hey, you know what I'm saying? He would just kind of get that little roundabout way. You, as the parent, it's your primary role to protect that child and to help that child become a healthy, functioning adult. And if you don't have a certain level of control as the parent, it breaks down. So the parent has to be able to say, listen, at any time, I'm going to take that phone. There needs to be a certain level of healthy fear where that kid says, well, if this phone can be taken anytime, I need to use it well. I need to make sure that if I don't ever want to get busted for using something incorrectly, I shouldn't use it incorrectly. And there's actually a biblical principle to that. It's called being above reproach. It means we should live our lives that at any time somebody could just look at our life and pass judgment on it. And we need to live our lives in such a way that when they do that, they're not going to find anything. That I'm going to live an honorable life. And doing that, that audit helps our kids to live that honorable life.
Yeah, and it's not just phones. I mean, it's the television, it's the computer. So I know for our family, we've put restrictions on the television, and my wife has put parameters on. And so anything that's over age appropriate for 14, it doesn't come on our programs. And so there's shows that I could watch, but because that restriction's on there, even I as an adult, I'm not watching. The same with her phone. We put devices on, like apps on her phone that she has to have a code, and she doesn't have the code. My wife has the code that she can't add an app or she can't delete an app on her phone without this secure code, and my wife has that. Right. And so it's the same with computers, and I know a lot of adults, especially guys, they know the program called Covenant Eyes, where it's a program that will take a screenshot of just randomly throughout the day while you're on your screen, and it sends that picture, that screenshot, to an accountability partner. Right. And for teens, that accountability partner could be their parent. So when they're on with their friends, it's taking pictures, and it's sending to the parent the photo. So those are just some of the things that we're doing at our house. Yeah. Along with the phone being turned off at night, because again, it falls on the parent to protect and watch over, because the apps and the websites, that's not their job. Their job is to sell, and their job is to try to get the students to use them. Right. And so someone had asked, so what are some, I mean, obviously we know there are a lot of bad websites out there, but just off the top of your head, because I know websites and I know like apps, they're always changing, but are there a couple of really bad apps that students should not have on their phones?
So that's a great question. I love that somebody threw that question in there, because so in terms of websites and apps that I would say that a kid should not have, or a kid should have very limited access to, would be an app that has a deleting content. So basically an app that would allow you to message someone else that only lasts for a certain amount of time, and then it disappears off the device. Which, like I said, most people, and even teenagers, don't understand how the internet works. So they think that the content has disappeared, but the content still exists on the servers of the app that runs it. So the number one most popular one about this is Snapchat. And Snapchat is used as a communication app, and it's to send photos and to communicate, but the content disappears. And that right there is a big red flag. I would say for parents need to allow their kids to use Snapchat with extreme caution, because you can take a lot of these measures that we talked about, Ken, the passwords and all kinds of stuff, but that kid having access to that app that deletes their content, and Snapchat's the number one, but there are other apps that do the same thing. But that's the primary one that most millennials and Gen Z are using, Snapchat. But it must be used with extreme caution because it deletes. Snapchat was actually invented for the purpose of sexting. It was created so that people could send nude photos of themselves to other people, and the content would be deleted. That's why. That's not how it's mainly used now. It's now mainly used for communication. It's basically like an upgraded messenger app, basically, but it has that element of deleting it. And that right there is a very dangerous app. So I would say use that with extreme caution. If your kids have it now, I would make sure you knew exactly who your kids are following and snapping and sending those pictures and information to. And the problem with that is you won't know. And the thing with Snapchat is it actually stores all of that data. Snapchat has a huge facility with servers, and kids think I'm using Snapchat, and it deletes, and I can say whatever I want. I can be as mean, I can bully, I can send whatever I want, and it goes away, and nobody can ever prove that I did it. Snapchat still has that data. In fact, I revealed that because I did a talk about wise usage of devices to our middle schoolers and our high schoolers. And when I said that at middle schooler, I had a kid stand up and scream because they did not know that it stayed. They thought that they could just say whatever they wanted. They thought they could treat people, and that, like I said, it goes back to the first problem: is that device. The first major issue is that they break down in communication. They think they can say whatever they want, and Snapchat gives them this mentality that I can do whatever I want and I'm never going to get caught, except for the fact that it's still there. You just can't see it on your device. You don't have that access. So I would say that probably the biggest one to watch out for is to stay away from Snapchat. Your kids are not going to like that. It's a very popular app right now, and it is a huge red flag. I would say Snapchat is the number one to stay away from.
What about YouTube? One of the parents had asked about their teenager starting a YouTube channel.
Yeah. So like I said, YouTube is the number one social media. YouTube is actually social media. It's a video site. It's a video platform, but it's actually a social media account because you create a profile, you communicate with people through it, you create content, and right now, a very popular profession. In fact, I'm not sure the percentage of this is, but if you were to ask a random middle schooler what they wanted to do after they grew up, it would be they would want to be a YouTuber, which is the phrase for saying somebody who creates YouTube content. They make funny videos, they make dance videos, they play video games and stream it, and it's crazy, but that is actually now it has become a legitimate means of making a living. It's insane. You can actually live off of being a YouTuber. YouTube will pay you. It's called monetization, where if your videos get to a certain number of likes or a certain number of views, YouTube will cut you a check, and they will cut your kid a check. Justin Bieber, everybody knows that musician. Justin Bieber was discovered when he was making videos on YouTube, and his entire music career launched. So our kids are seeing that. Our kids know that, and they say, hey, listen, people get famous from this all the time, so I'm going to jump on YouTube, and I'm going to put out content. And like I said, YouTube is a crazy. It's kind of this weird. It's very, very popular, and nobody really quite knows what it is. It used to be just like cat videos and funny, whatever. But now it's become this place where people share information and content and talent, and they're trying to be famous through YouTube, and they can make money from it. Your kids can make money from YouTube. I mean, this is crazy. When YouTube first came out, I don't even know how long, 15 years ago, you could get paid. My little brother had a friend who was getting paid from YouTube because he was making these videos. Which blows my mind. So it's like kids can make money off of YouTube. But with YouTube, YouTube has some restrictions, which is great. YouTube actually tracks and manages what goes on there at all. So YouTube has some very strict policies when it comes to nudity and pornography. Language is not filtered on YouTube, so you can say whatever you want on YouTube, and it's never going to get filtered. So that's something you need to look out for. If your kid wants to start a YouTube channel, wants to start a YouTube page, I would say that's a totally normal, totally fine thing. It would be just like you having a Facebook page. What I would do with that is I would know, hey, listen, what I would ask the kid, what do you want to create? What's the content you want to put out there? Let's talk about what that content is going to be, because you're going to be putting something on the internet, and once it's on the internet, it's there. You can delete it if you want to, but YouTube still stores those videos to their servers. So even if you upload a video and delete it, it still exists. It never goes away. Once you've created that, the way a computer works is once that data has been created, it does not go away. The web stores it. So if a kid, you say, listen, what do you want to create? Because whatever you create is going to be here and it's going to exist forever. So make sure you're creating something that you're proud of and creating something that you're not ashamed of or embarrassed of. It's almost like a photo album, maybe from our generation, to be like, hey, listen, if you're gonna take that photo, you gotta know that one day we're gonna look at it at a family reunion and we're gonna laugh and make fun of you. So it's like, but I would say YouTube, as long as you're aware of what your kids want to create. And when we get to the social media talk, the part of this conversation, we'll dive more into some healthy social media practices too. But YouTube, for the most part, is a fine app to use for kids. That's where they exist. It's their number one used one. It just like all social media, it needs parental oversight. Parents just need to know what's going on there.
Yeah, let's transition into that social media. What can parents do regarding the social media to keep their kids safe?
Yes. So social media, this is a question I get from parents all the time. When do we let our kids have social media? How old? How long do we wait? Should kids get their social media when they're in middle school? Should we wait till they're in high school? That's part of your family tech plan. That needs to be where you, the parent, kind of sits down, spend some time thinking about that, get some wise counsel for that, and say, okay, we're going to allow some accounts, we're not going to allow these accounts. And when that starts, is something that you need to figure out and say, okay, we're going to use wise judgment, but it's going to be when kids are at this age, whatever it is. So I've got a few points on why social media use. Number one is that you as the parent need to know all login credentials for every account. You need to know the account emails and the account password for every account. If your kid has YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, you need to know how to log into that app at any time you can. And once you're in there, lock it so that your kids can't change the password later. That if they try to, it sends you a notification. That way you can log into their account from your device and check in on things as well. That goes back to that audit. It gives you that ability to kind of look and see what's happening so that they can't get rid of that. So the first one is number one, you need to know how to get into their stuff. You need to know how to get into their social media account right there on the spot. With that, here's a little trick that kids don't like parents knowing is that they'll have fake accounts. They'll have multiple accounts of one social media. So a kid will have an Instagram account and they'll have what's called a Finsta, which is a fake Instagram account. And so they'll have more than one account. So if you go to look at your kid's social media profile, you need to go to the main page, click on the top and see, okay, are there more than one accounts linked to this email? Are there more than one accounts that my kid has on this phone? Because kids are sneaky and they will hide that. So every teenager that when they hear me say that to the parents, they get so mad because it's like their biggest secret, but it's something you need to know. Does your kid have a Finsta? Because a lot of times Finstas and fake social media accounts get used for cyberbullying, sending things they shouldn't be sending, or receiving things they shouldn't be receiving. So fake social media accounts are a danger. So we need to know what those login credentials are. The number two one is this, is that you need to know what the scope of the platform is. What is that social media account used for? What is it used for the most? And how your kid wants to use it. So if your kid wants an Instagram account, say, cool. Instagram is for putting out photo content. It's for people to share what they're doing with their life. It's like a photo journal. Or how do you want to use it? What's your desire in using it? The third one is this. I cannot stress this one enough. Know who your kids or know who is following your kids. Once your kid creates that account, people are going to start sending them friend requests. You need to know every single person who follows. This right there is just a pure protect your kid at all costs. One of the best tips ever is to say, don't allow your kids to be followed by somebody on a social media account unless they know that person in real life and you approve it, unless it's somebody that they know. So don't allow a stranger to follow your kid on the internet. It's basically like saying don't allow a stranger to follow your kid down the street. Make it be somebody they know in real life. Conversely, the same point is don't allow, you need to know who your kids are following, who your kids want to follow. Why is that important? Because the people your kids follow are creating content, they're getting out a message, they have an agenda, and it will start to influence and it will start having an impact on your kids. So you need to know, all right, who do you want to subscribe to on YouTube? Okay, this is what you want to look for. Well, I'm going to look at their content. I'm going to see what they put out, because maybe I don't like what they're putting out because they're saying a lot of things. They're using language that we don't approve of in this house, and they're saying things that we don't like talking about in this house. And so it's like you need to know who your kids are following and what content they're putting out. And then the final last major point for understanding social media and using it wisely is to understand and know on that app, no matter what it is, where the direct message feature is. So it's called a DM, the direct message. And what the direct message is a private messaging component of that app. And every single social media account has one. So there is a way for you to send information to another account that's not public. So on Facebook, you make a Facebook post, everybody who you're friends with sees that post. But just like Facebook has Facebook Messenger, when I get on Facebook Messenger and I send a message to my dad or I send a message to my wife, only my dad sees that, only my wife sees that content. Every social media platform has this. YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat is basically this, is just an app for the direct message. And this is dangerous. This is something where direct messages can be deleted. You can delete those off of Instagram. So that's another very kind of scary part of that you need to be aware of, that, okay, who are you direct messaging? Know how to find the DM section of every social media platform your kid is on. If your kid is on YouTube and Instagram, you need to do the research and the homework to know, okay, where's the direct message feature? And in part of that audit, I'm going to go to that part of the app and I'm going to look at that direct message feature and I'm going to see who you've been talking to. And like I said, if you give a kid the chance to, I'm going to give you an hour and I'm going to come get your phone, that kid is going to delete all the conversations they don't want you to see. So that's some healthy social media stuff. And I just want to drop in a few more things just in device, how to handle a device well. Like you said before, Ken, the number one thing for a device and using it well is to lock it and basically have it where you cannot add software, add an app without the parent's permission or the parent's passcode that the kid doesn't know. Make it so the kid can't download or delete any app without your knowledge. And when your kid says, hey, listen, here's my phone, I want to download this app, can I have the password? You need to say, okay, give me 24 hours. I'm going to look into this app. I'm going to research it. I'm going to learn everything I can learn about this app. And then in 24 hours, I'll let you know if you can download it. But you're going to have to wait 24 hours while I do this research into this app. Kids may not like that, but you say, hey, listen, this is part of the family tech plan. And if you want this app on your phone, I need to know what's on there. I need to know why you want to use it. And this is good because this gives us a chance to ask our kids great questions and have good conversations with our students and say, hey, listen, why do you want this? What's the purpose? What do you want to do with it? How do you want to use it? And your kid says, well, I want to do it because I want to use this. I want to create this content. Well, that's great for you as a parent because it helps you to know more about who your kid is and what they want to do. So that's a great conversation point. Like I said, lock that app fully. Make sure that at any time kids cannot add something to it or take it away. And this is not just for cell phones. It's for cell phones. It's for iPads. It's for video game consoles. Your kid's video game consoles, if it connects to the internet, it has the ability to download a messaging app. It has the ability to download software and apps to it that you probably wouldn't approve of. But that's probably the one that people don't think of the most. But your kid's Xbox has access to the internet. It's got a web browser. It's got a messaging. It's got a direct messaging
that have access to the internet.
Yes, if that device connects to the internet, your smart TV, your kids can message through it. Your kids can find things on there. Your kids can get onto any smart device. And now we live in a time where like refrigerators and microwaves are smart. I saw literally a video the other day of a guy checking his Facebook status on his microwave. And I don't know why you would want to do that. Why are you spending so much time in the microwave that you'd want to scroll through Facebook? But if it connects to the internet, it has these abilities, and you need to know this. So basically, whatever device in your house connects to the internet, as the parent or guardian, you need to know that thing inside and out. You cannot take a hands-off approach. You have to say, all right, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to know this inside and out.
Well, Burt, as we wrap up, obviously we all know that our students, our teens are on the internet, and you work with teens. So can you share with the parents how you're using the internet, how you're using social media to connect with students? And then how can parents connect with you?
Yes. So like we said, technology is used in amazing ways. And with all of this COVID and everything locking us up and not having like tangible youth group, we've transitioned to full youth group online. So I've just put another document here in the handout section of your chat. You can switch over that to see that. It's called the Online Youth Group Guide. So we basically have 4 main ways that we are communicating and having youth group online for your students. So we, number 1, use Instagram as the primary way to convey announcements and what's coming up next to your kid. So basically every week in quarantine, in the past 9 weeks, we've had a weekly calendar of like what we're at: competitions, games, Zoom hangouts, fun stuff, theology stuff where we like look at parts of the Bible. So it's a wide spectrum of stuff we're doing on Instagram. So Instagram really is the hub for your students. Now we have a Facebook page, and that's the hub for you guys. That's the primary ways for me and the youth ministry staff at Grace Church to communicate with you, the parent. That's where I'll put that schedule out for you guys. That's why I'll do parent-specific videos just for you. And that's a great place for you to communicate with me as well. So I use Instagram for the students, Facebook for you guys. And then we have small groups. Everybody in the world is using Zoom. Man, I wish I had a time machine that could take me back 6 months and I would put some stock in that company. But Zoom is king right now, and we use it for our small groups. So on Wednesday nights is when our middle schoolers normally would meet if we were having youth group. And we basically go live on Instagram. We have a message. We go through a topic that we're talking about from the Bible. And then after that, we transition to Zoom, and our kids go into small group where they discuss application. Our leaders pray for them. We have hands down, in my opinion, and I'm biased, the best volunteers at Grace Church. The people who give up their time to invest in the spiritual life of a teenager are worth their weight in gold. And that Zoom time is a great time for those leaders to invest in those kids, to love on those kids, to help those kids not feel so alone. And that happens on Wednesday nights for middle schoolers. And then on Sunday nights, we have a little bit of a different program. We call it the Youth Group Show Live. And it's basically a variety show. It's a youth group version of Saturday Night Live, but youth group. And it's got some fun comedy elements, but it also has worship. And there's a teaching in there as well. And then after that, we send our high schoolers to Zoom, and they have that same kind of concept, the same small group. So all those things are there in that document that I just shared. And a great way, if you need to contact me, if you have any questions, if you want to ask, parents, if you're listening to this and you want a phone call, you want to talk to me later, the best way to get in contact with me is just to send me an email at students@thatsgrace.org. It's super easy, students@thatsgrace.org. Send me an email. I'll set up a time for us to have a phone call. I would love to talk more and help maybe apply this to your family to give you some more, like we said, we're running out of time here, but I can give you some more details in that conversation. I would love to have that. Parents, student ministry is family ministry. My job is primarily focused on teenagers, but I know that if those kids have healthy and strong relationships with their parents, it's only going to benefit them. So I am in your corner, parents. I am here for you. I'm backing you up. I'm supporting you in whatever you need. So I just want to be a resource for you guys. So that's in there as well. And I also can do, I'll also put the notes from this entire talk in there as well. So you guys can download that.
The notes there, yeah.
I'm going to drop that here right now.
Someone had asked for those.
Yep, handout. I'm going to put this in the handout section as well. Hold on 1 second.
And I just want to thank everyone for jumping on. I want to thank Burt for all the information that he's shared with us as parents. I think it's really important that we know what our kids are using as far as the apps they're using, the websites they're getting on. We have to parent them, and we can't use the excuse that, well, we're not technology savvy or anything like that. If you like the webinars, every Wednesday night we have a new webinar. Next Wednesday night we have one on mental health, and Dr. Catherine Forbes Smith will be talking about mental health, and we know that's a big issue with the quarantines and everything that's going on. So please check that out and invite a friend. Share the link with a friend. Let them know that we're talking about this as well. All right. I want to thank everyone for jumping on. I hope you enjoyed it, and I want to say God bless.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Good night.